Thank you for entering into the alternative space with us. I'm your host, Nitai, and together, alongside Ashley Schroff, we explore the nature of the human experience using insights from various holistic wellness practices, psychological tools, philosophical ideas, and esoteric wisdoms. Through this journey together, we open up real-life examples to create modern applications for these teachings in order to develop new ways to create harmony in our daily lives. And now, together, let's expand. It's St. Patrick's Day this weekend.
Yeah.
And one thing I find interesting are the parallels we find in all of the holidays across all religions and traditions, and the patterns we see in the cosmos. Because on Tuesday, the day after this recording comes out, that's also the vernal equinox. And in the vernal equinox, essentially what happens in the sky is the equator of the Earth completely bisects the sun. The day itself, throughout the entire globe, is very close to a perfect split of the 24 hours of day and night, of 12 hours and 12 hours. So you might have thought I was going to go on a St. Patrick's Day tirade, but I'll poke you with that another time. I think
you can ask me about St. Patrick's Day next session.
But the significance of equal day and equal night, right? I think one thing that I would appreciate if I was starting to get interested in what are the implications for the cosmos in relation to the human experience, I would appreciate a little bit of a synthesis of a lot of the information that's out there that tries to do something practical for a human being to help orient themselves in life. And when I first began my search, I mean, somehow the patterns led to alchemy, and that's where it leads for a lot of people. And that word, that elusive word, is like becoming so much more popular today, right? And there's a lot of symbolism surrounding the space. There's a lot of symbolism surrounding alchemy. And so when you first approach the subject or the school, right, it can be intimidating because it's almost like you have to learn a new language. There are so many symbols involved. And the word alchemy, alchem, right, chemistry, it's essentially the transformation of chemicals on one plane, but then on other planes, it's going into the same type of transformation. And as we've discussed on previous episodes, there's this element of correspondence that takes place on different planes. So there's the ones that go on in the mind. There's the ones that go on in biology. They're the ones that go on in space, right? And in the esoteric teachings of alchemy that are trying to help us live a harmonious life, we are essentially what it's doing is it's pointing your eyes in the direction of the patterns that surround you, that are within you, and that are also in your body, right? And they're using symbolism and symbology in general to essentially do a sleight of hand so that things will click as you meditate on them. Because at the time where a lot of these free thinkers and scholars who were looking at every single science and every single spiritual practice, every single psychological practice, and incorporating them into a single school of thought, the churches were reigning power and dominion over all thought, right, over all of society. So they had to figure out a way to incept these ideas of truth into humanity where they weren't going to be killed, essentially. And so alchemy became a code where they can openly talk about the cosmos, but what they're really teaching you is about a very deep, fundamental spiritual experience. The chemistry that you can transform in your mind in order to attain freedom and harmony with and balance with yourself as you grow, right? And it gives you context for what the fuck is going on, right? And so that's all to say that when it comes to the patterns we see in the outside world, we can tap into things across this circle of time that we're going through at the right moments when we will have the most energy and power to do so. And since the vernal equinox is one of the times of the year where we have equal day and equal light, that's when it starts to point you towards an understanding of the symbolism in alchemy. And we've discussed in depth like polarity, the concept of polarity, right? Well, one of the more spiritual polarities that exists are the masculine and the feminine archetypes. And just to be incredibly clear again, it's like nothing to do with man or woman. That's the human representation of masculine and feminine. But really what it means is the connection between the mind and the heart. So the things we think and the things we feel. This can be represented by the left and the right brain. This can be, there are many planes where this takes place. It actually exists in everything. But one of the key representations in that are the sun and the moon. And if you look at what the sun and the moon does, the sun is expressing itself out through energy, heat, and light. And these are the things we think about. That's what our thoughts are doing, right? And then, but the energy comes in through communication, through the vibration, right? Then there's the things that we feel. This is the heart. And if you look out into space, the moon itself doesn't actually emanate any light, even though we can see it at nighttime. What's happening is there's an absorption taking place where it's almost consuming and then reflecting the light from the sun that's generated. And we're able to view that as the centerpiece, as the earth, right? We're right in between this connection that's taking place. And so when it comes to an equinox, what it's teaching you is that this is a time where you can restore a deep, deep level of balance within your system. The things you think and the things you feel, it is a time when you can really achieve a sense of harmony between the two.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you then, what would you, or I mean, if you want to speak for yourself, what will you do on Tuesday? Will you time it right at the moment, when it's 11 p.m.?
Mm-hmm. Similar to what's going on with the sun and the moon, right? Mm-hmm. What's happening with the sun is it's projecting light onto the moon, and then the moon absorbs it and then reflects it back into space, right? And so the microcosmic version of that we can take on is an understanding that we can behave as the sun and we can also behave as the moon, right? So we're becoming in tune with the things we think and the things we feel. There's two real things that can be done where you're just tapping into what it is you're thinking and you're tapping into what it is you're feeling and you're becoming aware of them simply. And if you want to actually take a meditative practice and put some real energy and intention into it, there are two primary forms of meditation, and this isn't taught at all by many schools. But the two various forms of meditation are one which is just absolute mindlessness, right? And the other which is an active form of meditation. You're achieving balance, right? You're achieving the center, right? The center. And when you're able to empty it out and achieve a center, then you're incredibly in tune with anything that comes to it. So you can feel very deeply if it's suffering. You can feel very, very deeply if it's bliss and love, right? So it's not becoming unattached and unemotional, it's being very much more in tune with it. And so if you can try and achieve that level of center within the heart and within the mind, you are you begin to understand how they interplay, right? What the interactions are over the course of time. And so that might give a little bit of context for things that people can just be conscious of on a day like that. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that to my awareness. I don't know that I would have known it was happening. But there's been a lot of shifts recently with like daylight savings time, and then driving yesterday, it was like it's so much lighter out.
Right.
The blossoms are coming. You can already feel the energy, and right now, I mean, today we were commenting how the day is just like it's like 78 degrees and beautiful. And I did a run this morning, and I was like elated with being able to be outside. I mean, you can run in the cold, I do, but today was perfect conditions. Yeah. And people were it's later in the week, people were really happy with the weather today, and you can feel all of that good energy. Everyone was like, lots of people were out in DC last night, just walking around, and the weather definitely has an effect, I think, on people. So it's good energy, and then the full moon last week, wasn't it the full moon last week? That was
New moon,
and you had mentioned to me to go out, and I did. I had a conversation with the moon. You said the moon was listening. I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for me to talk to the universe anyway, but no, it was a good reminder, and I was like, oh yeah, so we had a little chat.
Good, I love that.
I love that. Did you have a little chat yourself?
Something like that. Let me change gears for a second, because I think if anybody's listening, we've probably lost 90% of anyone who might have tapped in for a second. Yeah. But for those who stayed with us, who are like, all right, well, I still don't fucking know what this means for me, right? I would completely shift gears into something that just like makes sense, right? Something that makes a lot of sense, because it sounds a little bit poetic, like seeing the harmony in the world, but it's like, what does this fucking mean for my life, right? In modern day, right? I have an iPhone in front of me. I don't want to hear about the cosmos. So what I would essentially say is that the fallout of our daily lives is a direct relationship between the things we think, the things we feel, and what our impulses are, right? If you wanted to, and this has been obviously popularized today by like the Joe Dispenzas and the Bruce Liptons of the world. And what they do is they've started to activate and expand on a deeper understanding of the way the world works, where the hard Western sciences got to the place with like the Isaac Newtons of the world, where they just said everything was optics, right? Everything is material, everything is coming from atoms. But then when we advanced and we started to try and figure out what atoms are, then we realized that it's an infinite journey. Like the deeper we go, we start to realize that it just never ends. And so the conclusions that are permeating today are all centered around the fact that it's just consciousness. And we're starting to recognize that, even in the Western world, even in our sciences. And that means quantum physics are becoming like the only, like probably the most advancing sciences that we really know about. And now we're just using all the other sciences to derive patterns that can help inform things that we don't understand in quantum physics. And the reason I say this is because it goes to show that the universe that we live in is purely a conscious mental program that we've created. And we are either bound to it, or we're aware of this greater thing that we're kind of densifying energy out of, not a word. But through these like densities that we're experiencing, this like magnetic energy, this independent course of thought and experience that we get to have and embark on, right, as a human being. It goes to show the significance of thought and how consciousness also encapsulates our feelings and the things we do, right? We have such a, if we were to try and think about a definition for the word consciousness, there would be some type of multiple between intellect and awareness, but it's all of it, right? And that's where the limitations of our understanding are. And when we talk about expansion on the show, right, it can seem like this thing where we want to, like, energize yourself and continuously build and continuously grow, but it's like, actually it's not that, right? It's simply becoming aware of the place with which we're growing into, right? And we're allowing ourselves to attain that through the course that it has set out for us, right? Because we feel resistance if we force things, and we feel imprisoned if we don't grow. I think it just helps make things make sense, and it's like when we force our growth, we experience growing pains. So we have to meet it with like a level of love and understanding. But then when it comes to love and understanding, without the growth, it's imprisonment. And so this is all to say that consciousness is continuously expanding, and it's being represented through not only the things we think are intellectual, but also through the things we feel and the things we do. And the Buddhists call this the three dantian, your upper, middle, and your lower. So the chakras as a map would be what's in the stomach, right below your navel, in the center of your body, in your heart, and then in your mind. And these are said to be the qualities of the soul. So if anybody ever asks you, like, what is the structure of the soul, that's what it is, right? And the soul is kind of the automaton of like the human experience, right? That when we come into the world, that's what comes. And then the fallout of our lives are the way we structure the soul. And we can either do that in a productive or a destructive way. We get distracted sometimes by these outer things, forgetting that it's all a consciousness that encapsulates those components of the soul. And so what we want to embark on here is a structuring of the way we think and the way we feel and the way we will. And the word will, I used to have difficulty with it. It really just means your impulses, right? So what goes on in your will center is like choice, creativity, pleasure. These are all things that can either be in the driver's seat of the human being, where your animalistic side takes over, your libido takes over, or you can be conscious of them and use it as a very, very powerful tool. And so with like the modern understanding of what this is all composed of, right, what this world is comprised of, and again, it's going to be increasingly understood, then we can finally take into consideration that moon is consciousness, and the human body and the human experience is also consciousness, and every plane in between is consciousness, right? And so the structures that we see, the patterns that we see in the outside world and also in our inner world are all patterns that existed in something spiritual, and it became crystallized into and manifested into this physical reality. And the beautiful thing is that those patterns exist, right? Those patterns exist somewhere, and we see them represented all around us if we pay attention to them. But something very special goes on in our experience here, where we have, it can be thought of as a dualistic, polarized world where we're bounded to it, imprisoned to it, or just the opposite perspective is it's absolute freedom, right? Absolute freedom. So that's why the paradox of free will and versus fate will always persist, because it's a choice. It's a choice. And us as human beings, if we want to be consciously aware of how we can structure our soul as we continue on through this life, then we can understand that we are equally we are made of the same thing, and we are equally, we're not the ocean, but we're the drop in the ocean, is the Rumi quote. We are equally what's going on in the cosmos, because the pattern is somewhere higher, but we have the choice to engage with it or not. Since we are through the course of time experiencing a pattern that already exists, that means that if we want to feel harmonious with something, and we want to feel perfect, and we want to feel healthy, then we can align ourselves with the things that are going on the macrocosm, right? And that's why, since the heart and the mind, since what we think and what we feel are so crucial to our well-being and to our experience and to our growth, that when we do so alongside the greater world, it creates a very powerful, and significant experience for us that helps put us in the right direction. If we understand that it's all like this one big consciousness that's kind of put this map together for the experience, then instead of always trying to find a way out, right? Instead of always trying to find a way out of it and out of the experience,
That's right.
you completely take on a new perspective where you're like, wow, look at all this stuff that consciousness undertook in order to teach me such a simple lesson. Yeah, so I'm sorry for putting on a full lecture.
Yeah, I was just thinking, literally just said, I think you need to be lecturing. You need to be like in front of a philosophical classroom of students. That's what I envisioned just now. You could definitely do that. Don't apologize for the lecture. It was amazing. I'm sure you could keep going. Keep going. I mean, the words like awareness and consciousness and expansion, like we do use those words, and it's not we're using these words. It's just we embody these words. We're embracing them, and I remember first, like, I don't know, exploring the word expansion, and I would even just to offer a little bit of a sidebar of what you're saying is, I heard the word, I read about it. It's not like it's hard, you look it up in the dictionary, you understand what it means, but I wanted to feel the word. And so I love that when you're talking about feeling things is so crucial. Feeling it, that's embodying it. So I don't know, I feel like I was in the car, maybe driving something. I think a lot when I drive, actually. I do enjoy it,
Yeah, me too.
Right? It's just, I don't necessarily need the radio on or anything. It's just, or music, just driving, and really good thinking goes on. I'm reflecting, and I feel like the word expansion I felt it through my body. I was like, oh, that's just clicked, and I was like, that's what it means for me. And sometimes you think about the word so literally, rather than breaking it down, which you're very good at. And it's like, why do I want to expand? What does that even mean? I feel like I'm expanding. I'm reading. I'm doing the work. I'm doing these things. I'm writing. But for me, more expansion now is like the connection and the expansion of when you are doing things that are helping you and supporting you and empowering you to grow without even it being a thing. It's just consciously you are, or probably more unconsciously just doing it. And that is energy there as well when I think about the word expansion and how I am expanding and how I want others to expand and how I understand it. But no, and I don't know, I know that there isn't necessarily a step one to everything, but awareness for me is massive. If you are aware, then you are in touch with your heart and your soul. And your awareness can be just a little bit, and because it's curiosity, or you're asking questions, you're beginning to reflect, you're beginning to just see things differently, open to new perspectives. You don't necessarily you don't necessarily have to know what it means, but it just is a feeling of like, oh, okay, I'm curious about that. I want to be conscious of this. Yes, it's just being in that state of awareness. And
what was the thing
amazing.
that, was there something personal when it clicked that expansion is, like what expansion is?
That's a really good question. I think in that moment, it was more of a simple thing, but works for me was literally just understanding something I was listening to in that moment, and that probably was something to do with the podcast, in that particular moment. And I still was like, it doesn't resonate with me, but I like the word. And then eventually something just clicked. It's something they were talking about at that moment. I can't remember. It'd be really good to, think back or remember exactly what that moment was, but it was definitely knowledge and understanding something and absorbing something and probably listening to it again and again, right? And then not hearing it just for the first time, because not only, if you hear something for the first time, it doesn't always resonate and click, and that's okay. So listen to it again, give it a go, dig in a little bit more, ask questions. So that is the expansion, of that moment. So,
yeah, and when we look at anything that makes us feel like we're actually growing, like, we can say our physical bodies do, but like what perpetually grows, right? What is perpetually growing? And I would make the case, and I'm open to many infinite more things, but the two main ones that really grow are the things like our wisdom and the depth of experience that we experience in our feelings, right? And then also maybe our domain over our impulses. These are things that we can perpetually grow. And so when you talk about like expansion, like the will never necessarily made sense to me because it's so elusive. We know what feelings are, we know what how thoughts represent themselves, but I always needed a little bit of direction. Like, what is the impulse? What is the will really doing?
I can read you my little definition,
Please.
if that helps you. The will gives you the ability to focus on your ideas and to avoid the external influences. So, meaning, if you have an idea, if you have, that's where everything starts, is an idea in your brain, in your mind. And when you have the will to focus on that idea without someone saying to you, oh, you're not going to be able to accomplish that, or no one else can do that, or you can't. It's just like almost like, well, the Wright brothers, right? The Wright brothers are a good example of their, building the first airplane, right? They were told, everybody told them, not possible, never going to happen, give up on your dreams. But they ignored all the externals. But they believed in their own minds. They had the will to make this happen, to make this dream come true. So that's just like a little example, and maybe you weren't going on in that direction, but so the will can be used in a powerful way. That's what we need, the will, we need all of the faculties to be aligned in order to make things happen, for sure. But the will is definitely the focus.
No, I think that's a great example. The will is the engine for the expansion.
There you go.
In order to become aware, right? You said the first step in expanding is like becoming aware of it. Well, in order to become aware of that, you need to recognize that there's this greater space, right? This greater space in which you are expanding. And that's what we call the alternative space, right? So there's everything that humanity knows. We can call that knowledge, right? And then there's wisdom, which is a recognition of the law that's been undergone in order to attain that knowledge. And then also this direction that's in the linear expansion towards that alternative space, the place from which we channel into our reality. That's what our definition is for it, right? That's from reality transurfing. Same thing as like the expanded podcast, but again, the awareness begins when we recognize that there's something we're tapping into that's greater than ourselves. And that's the exact same place that the Wright brothers plucked their inspiration from, right? We are all just, whether we're Elon Musk, we're some type of Dalai Lama, or we're just doing our thing in our daily lives. We are all plucking inspiration from the ocean of this infinitude, right? And we're just trying to bring it back here, and we all have access to it. But there's a pace and there's a rhythm to everything. Right? Becoming aware of that makes, I've fought to help people become aware of that, and you can't.
And would you say then, and this is just coming through and asking you, if, I guess awareness in a sense is a choice, so you can choose to be aware or choose not to, and if you're not choosing it, perhaps you're blocking not wanting to be aware.
Here lies the paradox, right? Either you will surrender your free will to this greater system, or you will surrender to the product of your free will. And I say that because when we can understand the pattern and recognize that it's higher than us, then we can live in accordance with it. But if we are not aware of it, we have full free will to operate outside of the pattern, right? This is what we talked about with the cancer cell that was autonomous, causing chaos. We have the choice to do that. But if we decide to go down that road, then any type of disharmony that we do experience, we have to surrender to. And so it's not that one's free and one's not, it's that that's the paradox of choice. That's the paradox that
paradox
exists
of
here.
choice,
Yeah.
So then when you, the second part of what you just said, I won't try to repeat it because you said it beautifully, but and then you use the word product. So in the sense of you're surrendering in order to get something to...
The outcome
right.
of using free will, the unawareness to do what your impulses drive you to do.
Right.
When you likely are unaware of what the origin of those impulses are.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in a sense, the path to take to become aware would be to then surrender.
It would be to surrender the ego.
Just surrender the ego. Just, surrender and just be, and...
Just to look objectively.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
To look at things objectively. And that's hard to do, right? Because there's an element of death involved with that. You're
Right.
you're separating yourself from everything you knew your whole life, everything you were taught.
That's right.
The first 7 years of our life, we are in absolute theta, completely absorbing everything around us. Completely absorbing everything around us. We are in a hypnosis, and we are completely just downloading software into our system, centered around what is going on in our immediate family, then what's going on in our community, right? And then what we can pick up from anything beyond that. Some people never leave theta. They believe everything is objective. You make it to 80.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, when you recognize that,
That's why it's worth, being people who snap fingers, right? Because if I was in theta, I would want the opportunity to get some sassy lady to just come snap at me, right? So I think that's why we have to look at the plants, right? Because we're in hypnosis, and then we hit the sun. Sun being the alternative space. And it can undergo photosynthesis. And then it recognizes what its nature is. And then it can look around and understand the context of where it's headed. Based on my understanding of nature, the sprouts that lurked in the shadows don't grow the same way the ones that feed off of the sun do.
I guess there's a purpose for those in the world. For sure.
They adapt, they grow,
they
transform, and expand.
I would say it's important to say that this is still for all of nature and people, and going through this recognition of awareness and expansion and growing. It's still a process that you take time. Like the seed doesn't just pop up and it hits a flower. It still had to go through the growth in the dirt, in the darkness, and come up through and plant their roots, and that's your foundation, your roots, and you're strong, and you're feeling more capable, feeling more like I can do this, I can get through I can bud through the dirt, knowing maybe not even knowing what's on the other side of the dirt, but that's what feels innate to do that process. So when you're expanding and growing, you just have to have compassion and grace for yourself, and give yourself the word time comes in, but whatever, never compare yourself's journey to another person's journey. Your journey is your own, and we will exemplify through our own journeys as individuals, but it's just what feels right, especially when you become so consciously aware of the higher self, of what else is out there, and that feeling undoing or putting whatever the things we learned the first 7 years, first even 20 years of our lives, and just say to ourselves, that's okay, I still had to learn that way. I can unlearn those things and still grow and be amazing. Never ever put yourself down, because it's, when someone will say, God, I wish I knew that then. I don't catch myself saying that. It's like, well, even if you did know that then, you still doesn't necessarily mean you would have chosen that path or that decision or that whatever. It's never a mistake, which we've talked about before. So just allow the journey and the growth to be exactly what it is and what it was, and move forward from that and move on from that, and actually appreciate and accept whatever that was for you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, these journeys, but that's the beauty of it. Like, I said to somebody recently, I was like, well, what's perfectionism? Like, why, what do you mean you this is perfect in your life? And I just said, well, then why are you living anymore? What's the purpose of life if you're not you've reached perfectionism? You're perfect, or that, that's what their goal was, like to be perfect in their lives with all the things that they want to be perfect at. I'm like, well, then what do you do then?
Yeah.
That sounds boring. Like, what, so, okay, you're perfect, and then you die, and then we never see you again. And
like
then
what?
Done.
And what was the point?
What's the point? I mean, define perfectionism anyway, but, and then when I said it to her, she was like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Like, you're basing that off of the way your mother raised you, is this level of perfectionism.
Again, perfect is like equally everything, but equally a void. A fucking boring place to be.
Total void.
It's a boring place to be. We get to be this tiny little thing, right? That's venturing out into the infinite. That's way cooler than perfect.
Way cooler than perfect.
We are this tiny thing that separates that giant thing from its perfection. That's way cooler than being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So like, allow yourself to feel small.
And the whole idea of being perfect and showing up that way, and you get recognition for that. Oh, everything was so perfect. I was like, well, even if it is perfect. It's just perfect the way it is. And nobody will know what happens behind the scenes. I've said that to Seb, but with the acting thing, I'm like, nobody knows what's happening behind the scenes. And if there's any mistake going on stage, we actually don't know. So just go with the flow of it. And there ain't no such thing.
There ain't no such thing.
Ain't no such thing. You're perfect. Just the moment was perfect. You are you're putting yourself in this, I don't know, this facade of being perfect, and you get recognized for it too. That doesn't help, the external validation, but we should not be looking for that anyway, because then you're losing your soul, you're losing out on your authenticity, and then you spiral out of not really knowing who you are, because you're then choosing and living a life based on how people are going to show up for you in that way of validating your mindset of perfectionism. But when we pretend to be perfect or want to live in a perfect, whatever that is for you, you're hiding, there's fear. The minute you aren't perfect, you are internally crumbling inside, because you're like, oh my God, everyone's going to find out that I am not perfect. Mm-hmm. And that is that mindset. And so, when I was talking to her about it, we went there, and she said it stems from her mom and the perfectionism, and that's just like, she's like, my mom was always so perfect. I'm like, but now you've just labeled your mom this level of perfectionism, and think how hard that was for her. Then she now has to portray this person.
Hold up to that.
Bullshit. Yeah. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation. It wasn't recent, but it just reminds me of when I said to her, so when you reach this state of being perfect, what's next?
Then what?
Then what? I literally said it to her.
It was like a
light bulb went off, though.
Yeah,
she was like,
I mean, people go into mass depressions after winning championships.
Yes.
Because they're like, okay, so I won. Now what?
Now what?
Expansion shouldn't be thought of like something that's like the plant isn't only going upward. It's expanding outwardly, mm-hmm. right? And its roots are going deeper into the earth. So it's not just about attaining the championship. It's about height and depth. And a lot of times in singleness, we achieve height. This is a direct Carl Jung quote. He says, in singleness, we achieve height. And in communion, we achieve depth. Right? So it's not about us going out and winning and attaining being perfect. Mm-hmm. It's about the full experience of the thing. Right? There's more than one measurement, right? Very clearly, mm-hmm. right? So we can't just have these metrics of self-perfection. We are part of something greater. And I think you were spot on in kind of the way you approached that,
mm-hmm.
and the way you kind of
guided her through that.
Painted that picture to her, because it'd be fucking boring to be perfect. And we go on in depth with like quoting philosophers like Jung, right? And Carl, I say Jung or Jung, so he's two names.
When you say
but,
we, you mean you.
I'm just saying as society.
No, but
Yeah.
My memories.
We and my other personalities that I didn't tell you about. We go on about.
Oh no, I've met them. You just don't know I've met them.
They didn't tell me.
They haven't told you yet.
They haven't told me yet.
Not all of them are talking to each other at the moment.
Yeah, where are they going right now?
Part of the side I would add to that is the discovery, the rediscovery of the, if you talk about the flower, the plant, becoming a flower. It's like such a discovery of what they're becoming.
Mm-hmm.
That's also again part of the process. So.
Yeah.
If you release all of the things that people are telling you how to behave and what to do and how you have to be this, you have to do this is what your grandfather did, this is what your mother did. Fuck that noise. Do what you want. Do what resonates with you.
Yeah.
Become the flower that you want to become.
Yeah.
And so part of removing all of that, releasing all of that, whatever, unblocking it, then the creation comes in and the discovery.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, why go through that whole lecture I went through in the beginning?
Right.
To just teach anything other than the fact that your thoughts are directly impacting what your experience is here. And you can cherish it and you can make it consciously something that you would fight for, right? You can consciously make it a place that you would want to dwell perpetually. Mm-hmm. You can do that. Like, take Dispenza. The work they're doing is proving that you can change the expression of all your DNA, right. Literally through what you think, feel, and will, mm-hmm. Right? Science is proving that.
That's right.
People are getting out of wheelchairs that they've been living in. People are being cured of blindness and deafness. It's real.
It's real, yeah.
And people don't question that, right? So obviously when information like that crosses your field, you're like, okay, it's worth paying attention now. It's worth standing up mm-hmm. and looking around and saying, okay, what is inhibiting my freedom to do so? And those are the things you're clearing out, like very fundamentally. The perfection is not a place. The perfection is the pattern, it's the principle where the experience becomes a continuous fulfillment of everything. But the truth is that if you're in the very center of all things, right, because that would be the perfection, right, the center of the all and the void, there's a depth to it. You suffer just as much as you experience the bliss, and that's also expanding. Mm-hmm. And so there's an element of valor that goes on in the awareness of where things are headed, because everything is deepening, everything is getting higher, everything. And so I can understand why people's egos are protecting them from the awareness of something like that.
That's right.
This is a big undertaking, but what it's doing is it's preparing us, right? It's making sure we're prepared, and it's not going to give it to us until we're ready for it.
That's right.
It's not about being dogmatic. It's about giving people the opportunity to make the leap when they are ready, right? It's not judging people and saying that they need to learn and they need to grow. It's that I know it would serve me when I was ready to get some outside information that I could integrate and expand on. And everyone's going to get there, because it's just a matter of if you are aware of it or if you're not aware of it. Sometimes you'll just show up, right? Sometimes mm-hmm. you're at the gate of death and you're 90 and you didn't know, but you got there. You didn't know you were going there,
right.
But you got there. It's not to go back and scorn yourself for letting that happen. It's just like, okay, this is this dance that I have to develop some level of skill in. Mm-hmm. What a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you take the perspective of the all awareness, then you take the perspective of the experience you have, this finite experience, this one that comes attached to mystery, right? The one that is inseparable from mystery, but it's the recognition that the wholeness and the void exists, and you're operating within that. And that's the more colorful experience that, it went through all this effort just to give you that. And then you can appreciate it for what it is. So it's not looking at the imperfection as perfection. It's recognizing that it's both, but for a purpose. The purpose that you have the free will to decide. Mm-hmm. And you can decide with your free will on a purpose that speaks to you, that works for you, that allows you to grow and expand harmoniously instead of forcing anything or neglecting it.
Yeah, if we're neglecting, I guess if we're neglecting it, then in some ways there could be the level of, is this really a gift? And how will it serve others? And is it serving me? And also recognizing that whatever this purpose is for you is your gift, and doing a disservice to yourself and the world if you aren't sharing in that gift. So, and that's like, again, for me, part of the journey and the process of what I've been going through, and tapping back into like what, being a child again. Like, what did I love doing when I was a kid? And we've talked a little bit about that before. That's where the dreams come back and come through you, and the imagination, and when were you happiest? Where was the joy? Before all the other things came in and jaded us, which is part of the process. But yeah, tapping back into like those feelings of what made us happy then, and what were those dreams, and what were those anything you want. And even having a chat yesterday with one of the boys, we were talking about, it was actually Shay who said it. He's like, well, and I said, we'll talk about mistakes and think decisions and figuring all this out and doing it together. He's 17 and just recently, and it's just it's really impacted both of us, and we were talking about that. And I was like, I asked him, maybe I'm going off on a complete different tangent, but I asked him, I said, how can I show up for you as a mom? And we talked that through a bit, but one of the things he said was, he's like, well, you're doing it for the first time too. And I love that he had that reflection.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
I would have, that's amazing.
Amazing.
I would have said, don't check my browser history. Don't look in any of my drawers. And don't read my texts.
That's actually stuff I'm not doing, for sure. Yeah, but that's a good point, actually. I'm going to check his browser now. But he did. I'm sure he's pretty good about, like, this is like, we'll hide that and hide that. But no, he did say that. It was pretty cool. I had like tears in my eyes thinking about it.
Yeah.
And we there was a couple things that led to that conversation. That's why we got there. And I just dug in a little bit with him. And I've had some moments of revelations with him recently, and that was one of them last night. It was pretty cool for him to say, well, you're doing this for the first time too. And I was like, I am, and I'm going to, I don't always know what to say or what to do, but if I want to be better at what I'm at this time in your life.
The expression of that earnest desire to serve in the best way possible is the elixir that we're looking for. It's not doing the thing perfectly.
That's right.
Right, because then when people recognize that they don't feel discouraged with this lingering feeling of not having done or said or thought the perfect things. It's the communion. That is a sense of belonging we're giving him, where he doesn't feel like he's going to have to figure everything out in life.
That's right. That's exactly what we talked about. I love that you just said that, because he was so concerned about some things, even with me, and I was like, don't worry about those things. Like, just be in the moment, and that's not your place or your job to fix that or to worry about that, and just be you. Not worry about anything, but be you. You're a high schooler, you're 17, you're with your friends, like this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And then some of the things, it's just really cool. But some of the things he was talking about and telling me about, I think sometimes we get so hung up on the details of those things, and that could be with any relationship or friendship. If you're having a discussion where something makes you feel uncomfortable because you say something that they don't want to hear, they don't want to know. And I had to shift my focus, and I was like, okay, I hear you that those little things are bothering you. I'm like, but what's underneath that? Like, what is actually right? And I asked
Amazing
him,
question.
Yeah, and he responded with that. He was like, you're right, it's not actually about those little things. So those little things are my little triggers, those little things bother me or annoy me. But then he's like, this is what's actually really bothering me. This is what's underneath it. And so we dug in a little bit there with him, which is really powerful. We were both in tears and hugged it out, and it was really cool. And I wrote him some reflections this morning, and so, yeah, I know, and I checked in this morning, and I was like, I would imagine he's still processing a little bit of what we talked about. I mean, I know I was this morning as well. But yeah, it's a great question. It's like, well, it's not all those little things. Go deep, and what's underneath all of that, that pain, that confusion, that whatever. And he was able to answer for the most part pretty well.
Yeah, it's profound the way he responded to you and the way he was able to look inward.
Yeah.
This is a very real example of why we can benefit from the awareness of the orientation and the being able to separate out a little bit and compartmentalize a little bit of the difference between the things we think about, the things we feel, and the things that we will to do, because this earth is not about hovering in the thoughts all the time, and it's not about being overly emotional all the time, but these are things that we can use to counterbalance where we're supposed to be harmonious. And an example here, with the context of what the souls of your kids love to do, right? There are times when we get caught up in our thoughts where we can balance that out on the opposite side of the pole with the things we do, right? And that's why we don't have to look at the heavens and say we're trying to achieve heaven. And we don't have to look at the earth and say we're trying to escape the earth and being materialistic. It's like, how can we use one to balance out the other? So sometimes when we're in our head too much, it can cause confusion, and we need to be without the mind. And that's why the things we do put us into a subconscious state in the mind through the motion of the activity. And there are things that our soul loves, and it's very obvious when those things happen. I mean, for Sebastian, in this case, it would be acting, right? It'd be theater, it'd be things along those lines. For Shay, I mean, I would imagine it's baseball, right? And there's beauty in being aware of these things that are equal to the soul of value, but they counterbalance the place that the soul might be residing, and it's causing a little bit of stagnation. So we want to be fluid. We want to center in us that like an infinite line moving up towards the skies, and an infinite pillar moving down through the earth, to the core of the earth. And within this column of glory, we are able to navigate, and leaving that open to whatever's coming. But if we remain in certain centers, right, the center of the head, or if we remain in too grounded or too close to the earth, then we can be confused. And that's the only reason awareness comes in. But again, the easy way to do that is if I'm too in my head, I'll come to this later, I'm gonna go play some baseball. Because I just need to let things out. I need to create some motion in this pillar, in this column that exists within my body. And that's where we begin to play with the world. We begin to develop sovereignty, because it's well, now I know myself, right? I know myself, and I know the things I can do, the tools that are at my disposal, which everyone has, that I developed, that enrich my soul, that fuel my soul, that give it energy. And it's when you think about it that way, it becomes less abstract and less of this ethereal kind of conversation that people have, but it's all saying the same thing in different contexts across the millennia, right? It's okay, in modern day, if I want to achieve balance, it's simply a matter of developing these different faculties that exist within these three centers, these three Dantian, right? It's you endure the thing you're experiencing to the fullest. You don't avoid it and let it impact you. You endure it to its fullest, and you let it move through you. And then you'll realize that very expression of either absolute bliss or absolute suffering is the elixir that makes way for the growth. And then when you grow, that instead of the antidote being spun around in your mouth, that very tonic has given you the ability to spin the world around you.
Right.
These, this is all either a aware or unaware process of expansion. And those thoughts and those feelings are going to get deeper, right? And this is why I was talking about valor in terms of the expansion that these kids are undergoing, that we're all undergoing. They're only going to get stronger.
There's so many bits and pieces in there that are so relatable to the experience, and you know, our kids have to feel these things in order to really learn about who they are and in a way that we can't avoid pain. We can't avoid being uncomfortable. Like that's part of the human experience. So if instead of me beating myself and being like, oh, I should have been more blah blah, it's more like, okay, I've been showing up in this way. How can I show up better? And so it's still giving. That's such a saying. I'm not taking responsibility and ownership for not doing what he needed me to do, but maybe I didn't know as well. So releasing that. But at the same time, it's still growth for both of us. We still had to go through that a little bit of pain yesterday to work out what it is that was making him uncomfortable, me uncomfortable. So, because I think that sometimes we shelter too much, and we, of course, you want to protect. This is his baby that you made, and you want to protect it and take care of it. But then we also need to let it fall down and get back up again, make mistakes. Know that he went through that low period, that low moment, that low time, and that he's now feeling better from that. And so to get used to those waves of emotions that are going through all of us. And so I love that they are emotional. I love that they are sensitive. Not that I don't want to label them that, but they have these feelings.
Yeah.
They have, and especially for, I hate to say it, but for being boys, I want them to have all of this, because it will make them more well-rounded in general as a human being.
Yeah.
Whether you're a boy or girl, everyone has these emotions, these feelings, and there's no judgment on my part, and how they interpret things as well, like when they experience their own stuff, whether it has to do with me or something at school or other people. So they're interpreting it in their own way. That's their own experience. And I found that we really had to be patient and listen to one another and hear. And I was really trying to say, I'm hearing what you're saying, and this is what it sounds like to me. So it's almost like giving him the opportunity to say, well, yes and no, because I don't want to assume, even though he's like sharing words and thoughts with me, but it's still like digging in a little bit more. It's like, tell me more, or what does that mean for you? And I guess in some ways, I've been doing that for many years with them, not at very much at a different caliber as I am now. And I still remember them coming to me at one point. I can't remember which kid it was, and they asked me questions about the spirituality and soul and all these things, and I was like, where did these questions come from? But it was actually a school project, and they decided to. So I guess sometimes we should realize more how much we impact, not only our children but other people, in our behaviors, in our choices, in our interactions. And again, no judgment. We're all going to do the things we're going to do. But I realized I probably was sharing at that time a lot about spirituality in my own way that resonated for them. And I love that. And I've even been asked, like, what are your values, Mommy? And we talked through some values, and this is what these values mean for me at this time. And so they have come to me with those kinds of questions, and I find that interesting that they're able to do that. And so when we talk about exemplifying, they're watching.
I mean, yes, this is a perfect depiction of why the recognition of how we impact others is not just through the things we do or say. It's the whole picture. And when you realize that, you become very careful about the things you think and the things that you feel.
Yes.
Because it's all connected. Take an example of a person who there's a curious type of person that everybody knows who always goes out into the world and tries to do right for others. But after all this right doing and all this act of service, they're still punished for it mentally. I'm serving everybody. Why is my life not turning around? And then in a very practical way, you look at them from the outside and you can immediately recognize what's happening, where you have this miserable person going and trying to help people.
Right.
We don't want to be helped by miserable people. No one is going to be receptive to the help and the hand of a miserable person. And that's why it's the whole picture, right? Because the thing that's going to benefit this person is to figure out, how to achieve harmony in their own mind and in their own soul, instead of depending on the accolade to come and give them salvation, right? It's for the wrong reasons. It's actually absolutely backwards.
Right.
And so when it comes to being positive and being an exemplification, it's the number one thing you have to do, which is exactly what you just said, but just to emphasize it, is to be positive, is to be healthy. And that is way more than the act itself or saying the right thing. We just need to be able to look at things that are balanced, and that helps us balance ourselves. Going back to Pythagoras, and I couldn't help it, but he talks about how in Egypt there was a form of therapy where people simply sat and looked at perfectly balanced geometric prisms, and that was therapy. But the same thing we do also happens when we listen to music for therapy. When it's a perfectly balanced song, light and color can be expressed in a different representation through waves, through sound. Color has a tone to it, a rhythm to it. Same way, there's a geometry. If you look at cymatics, there's a geometry to different vibrations, different frequencies and tones. You can play a frequency and it makes a pattern, right? And so all of it is a different plane expressing something else. And so the very structure, the very pattern that we are creating within our own soul can be perceived by other people, and they can immediately experience harmony or disharmony. Yeah. So the best thing we can do to be therapeutic is for all of our expression to be this beautiful pattern. This is why you can give someone a baby, right? And that baby will fucking cry its eyes out, and you didn't do anything wrong. Or it'll rest peacefully.
And you can almost be a bit of a quote unquote judge of character when you hand your baby to somebody and the baby's like, what? I'm sensing that this is not I don't want this person to hold me. But dogs are like that too. Yeah. So watch your baby, watch your dog, and see how they react to. And again, when you say the positive energy in those moments when we're, figuring out these times of growth with our children or with other people, again, for the record, I fuck up plenty. I'm not. This is. But by my fuck ups or my mistakes, obviously they are what they are. I've learned. For me, I reflect and I learn from them. Right. That's the thing. It's reflection. Reflection comes in massively.
That's integrating the shadow. Right?
Integrating the shadow.
Our integrity. Mm-hmm. Our integrity is not avoiding these things that exist within us. The word integrity can be also applied to architecture, where there's the integrity of the structure of the building. And if all aspects of the building are not accommodated for, then that building will topple over, right? And so our structure, there are things that we just have to become aware of so that we can balance them out. That's simply what it is. And if we don't, if something keeps surfacing that we're not just allowing to be aware of and we're repressing it, then we're going to be unstable, completely unstable. The biggest evils that we see in the world, the Hitlers of the world, the hard thing to do is recognize that exists within you. But you become aware of the potentiality of it so you can avoid it from manifesting through your behavior and the way you think and feel, right? So that's why we're all in this shit together, right? Because it's not a judgment on something that someone else does. It's a recognition of all the shadows that exist, but also all the light that exists in the world. And then orienting yourself within the context of that, and it's always evolving. But these are the things that help us progress.
And that would be a release of the ego as well, and being more mature, and just, you know, what's the point of, I don't need to be right with these experiences, for instance, with my kids. Even though at some moments you're kind of like, well, wait, I am the adult here, do have some experience, and I can offer this. And so, but it's like still giving them that space. I'm even navigating that myself, because my first time having a teenager that's a 17-year-old person in my life that's intuitive, and he's intellectual, and he's curious, and he's all the things I've always wanted him to be and encouraged him to be. And now I'm like, fuck, I found my match. You know, it's like a little bit of that yesterday. I was like, damn, I created a monster. I'm like, I need to back up. Anyone? But yeah, it was like even perplexed at some point. I was like, okay, this is some good practice for me too. And you just have to like release the ego and just be in the moment, and just like, I don't know what to say, you know, I don't know what to do right at this moment. You don't have to. Again, that's part of like the knowledge.
Do you say that to him?
I said to him, I'm just not sure how to respond to that. I don't know what that means for you. And I didn't. I was just like, tell me, can you explain what that was? But I was like, I said, sometimes I just don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just owning that for sure.
That's great.
You know, he definitely is I remember the saying that my friend Peg said to me once. She's just like, I said, this is when I did this program with her. And I'm like, I have some really good ideas. I want to maybe do my own mentorship program one day. And you might know the saying, but it's basically like, when you start working on these things and you find your purpose and you find your connection, you're expanding and growing. She said, you keep doing what you're doing and excelling in that way, momentum forward for you, and you will hit you'll be passing me, you know, at the top of the mountain, on the way to the top of the mountain, something like that. Not that I'm looking to pass anybody on a mountain, but it's just your growth is your growth. But I didn't understand what she meant, but now I kind of could do with like that moment of when you are mentoring somebody, when you are guiding somebody, when you are working with people and expanding. Yeah, they will take their own path. It's not really like a higher level, but I guess in some ways we don't encourage people because we don't want them to bypass us.
Yeah.
Hell no.
But what you're saying is like, you've absolutely excelled at your job when the people that you're mentoring, you're parenting, you're working with, mm-hmm. surpass you. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. That's the goal, because think about the expansion. That's how expansion occurs. We want people to be better than us.
Absolutely.
And we don't get better if we're not surrounded by people who are better than us. That's right. And so the people who operate from that like competition state, mm-hmm. they imprison themselves in their current state of aptitude and whatever it is that we're talking about. I've definitely done that. This is something I had to work on so hard, because it was shoved down my throat to be the positivity in competition. Mm-hmm. It's shoved down your throat. It's with your testing at school, with a lot of sports. It's like all of my sports I think that I played were team sports, right? I didn't play any solo sports. So I didn't develop this level of you versus you. I developed this level of, are we winning or are we losing?
Right.
How many championships did we have? How many points did you score? How many assists did you have? The thing about game theory is it's how long are you staying in the game, right? And in order to stay in the game perpetually, you need to continuously be growing, evolving, and changing, not hoarding the information that you have that other people don't have in order to advantage yourself.
That's right. There is that mentality out there. Oh, this is a hoarding mentality, for sure.
But they've lost already. And that's why it's not like one's better than the other. It's like, look, you either play or you don't. It's like, what is this all for? You're gonna have that question if you're not devoting it to something greater than yourself.
And I was gonna say, if you are holding on to that and not expressing it and thinking like you can't share it, you can't be it, you can't whatever, you choose not to. That's when the will comes in. There is a will to do that if you want to share, to collaborate. Collaboration is amazing. I love thinking about bringing all these people together, and it's something I've talked about with one of the Shift girls. Like, these people would add such value to one another if we brought them all together. Imagine that would just like combust. Like, we were already, it's just, why would we not do that? Women are amazing. We should be empowering more women, encouraging, and that's one of my things as well, is just women.
Everyone's amazing.
Everyone's amazing.
Yeah.
But if I talk about from a female perspective, there are more men and more women talking about a man and a woman in such a positive way. What I'm finding a lot of those on for sure on Instagram, and I love it. I love that they're like, empower women, and also wait, the men also are going through their things. And when I started working with parents, teaching infant massage, I recognized so much more when both of them were in the room with me, and how involved and how the dad is more, the parental vibe, and then the maternal vibe that was going on in the moment, when generally it was only the mom. And when the dad came into play, it was such a beautiful dynamic, and it gave me another level of awareness of how and I know, of course, dad is impactful, but even more so from the perspective, it's like I can look at it from a different perspective, because I'm not in it. I'm just working with them, and how precious that was, that the dad, and I would say, listen, you have a limited time during the day. Massage is a perfect way for you to connect with your baby, and it's quality care. It's quality. I know I feel like I'm going off on a different tangent, but there is quality in those dynamics with a male and female, and recognizing that everyone has a place. And for sure, no checklist, no I did this, you did that, and it's like, fuck that. Everything balances itself out. So if I'm doing more one week and he's doing more the next week, if you're in a relationship with somebody, check in with one another, of course, and have that. But again, like just to be in the moment and to recognize, and it was just so beautiful to watch that unfold with the dynamic of them. And in some ways, actually, the mom was able to like sort of just take a moment and watch, and the dad was participating, and so it gave her that space. And I think another level of respect he's capable of actually connecting with our baby through touch, and talking, and being on the floor, and being in a position where maybe perhaps they would never have done that had they not done some sort of massage. So I don't know, I found it to be very methodical, but also even keeled, and it was helpful for me to watch that unfold, and rather just focusing on the maternal side of the mom only being able to do this, but the dad as well being.
It sounds like the vernal equinox.
The vernal equinox.
Where the sun and the moon were balanced.
It was a great balance.
And they allowed spring for the child.
Thank you for joining us in the alternative space. We hope sincerely that our time together has left you with something new to consider and awakened new powers within you that may have been dormant. It is our promise to you, our listeners, that we will continue to advance our wisdoms alongside the production of the show to become a continuously more enriching and expansive experience. We've been lucky to receive many questions from those of you who have been on this journey alongside with us. So we've decided to open up a platform where you can meet with us each one-on-one to tap into personal aspects of your daily life that you've been working on. If a session like this speaks to you, please find the details within our show notes. our sessions are 100% donation based, with proceeds funneled directly back into the show. Lastly, friends, as you go on your day to come, we send you off with absolute love and appreciation. Talk to you next week.